Hi, welcome back to Jen's Kitchen. So glad you came back to see me today for an episode that was really kind of a surprise episode. So I had a really nice conversation with one of my subscribers. It's the Record Changer 4038. He had mentioned that he had put a challenge out through his podcast or his channel that he called Take Two, but he didn't get many takers, if any, for this particular challenge, indicating also that it was a challenge for him. The challenge was to only be able to pick two records. If you could only pick two, either two records, two CDs, I would say, if you're watching this and maybe records and CDs are fun for you, but books are your favorite thing or whatever your main collectible item would be, I think about the two that you would pick. In this scenario, we're talking about records and or CDs. And a double record, a double CD would only count as one, and you were not allowed to choose box sets. So that really got me thinking. And I think that I thought it was going to be really hard. And it was a very hard challenge for me. But I did narrow it down to two. And the funny thing was, in doing this little exercise, it got me thinking about records that are meaningful to me and how we would pick those records. Some might grab something that is a value, right? Maybe a more expensive record in your collection or something of that nature. But really, for me, in my evaluation, I chose two records that were incredibly meaningful for me. And along the way, I discovered that part of what made it hard was that I'm choosing probably from my heart. It's that audible memory, the things that got me interested in music in the first place, things that stand out about family and friends. And those are the moments that I keep going back to again and again when I nostalgically think about music in my life. So that's how I chose these records. I'm kind of also maybe morphing this episode into a little bit of a two-part episode. So the first being to answer his question, which two would I take? But then piggybacking onto that with what I've kind of now been referencing in my mind is my emotional support music. So albums that are super meaningful to me in an emotional way. They evoke emotion in me. Makes it hard for me to imagine not having them or some form of them in my life. And another thing that just kind of a fun fact that really got me going down that road was I've mentioned on here before, collected records for a really, really long time. And I think it was interesting to see how I valued records. And what I mean by that is always had records that were important to me going back in time, right? Like a couple that I'm going to showcase, family albums, things of that nature. So at a very young age, I love to catalog my records. This is my original little recipe box with my index cards in it. I've managed to keep it. And with my terrible penmanship from years past, I don't know if you guys can see this. This was some of the cards. This was my Duran Duran. This was the continued Duran Duran card. This was interesting. There's my Damned when I got the Damned on tape, and I would write tape. If I had a CD, I'd put CD in the corner. I just thought it was really interesting because my first set of cards are not necessarily in alphabetical order, and I do like order. But what I found fascinating was I would start to highlight certain cards, and I had things just to the front of the stack. Like there's The Cure highlighted. I don't know why I had Lionel Richie highlighted, Madonna. So I don't know if I was pulling records and highlighting certain ones based on how often I listened to them. It was really sort of fun to reflip through these. I've revisited these before, but when I had the mindset of a record that I wanted to take with me that was important to me, it really sort of brought the message home that I've had a lot of things important to me in my life musically. And this really highlighted how I was thinking about music even at a young age. This particular one, I would write my albums that I had. I would have 7 inches, 12 inches, videos, like anything I had, I just started writing down. And then of course it morphs into CDs. But I just thought that was funny because obviously it meant something to me. And I'm a little bit of an organizer. I mean, I think that's a subject for another day, right? That I would spend my time in, my adolescence cataloging and organizing my records. But again, that's a show for another time. If you were like that as a child, you might put that below. It didn't matter if it was my records. I had Barbie dolls and goodness knows what else. But anyway, I digress. So that really kind of set the stage for me to do this little bit of my top 10 emotional support records, if you will. So first of all, let me say the two records that I picked to answer the Record Changers challenge are part of my 10. I'm going to showcase them first, and then I'll highlight the others. But my very, very first record that I'm going to pick that are the two that I would take with me. One would be Duran Duran's Rio. And why I chose Rio is because obviously I've had a lot of records come and go in my life at a very young age, as you might see here in a bit. Rio was I was 11 years old. It came out in 1982. This is my original copy. I heard Duran Duran before I ever saw Duran Duran. I remember, the great, fights we used to have as kids was like, did you listen to Duran Duran? Did you listen to Van Halen? Where was your allegiance? And I remember people going, you only like Duran Duran because they're five good looking guys. Okay, fine. They're very, girls went gaga over Duran Duran. I was no different. But in fairness, I did not like them because of the way they looked. I liked them because of the way they sounded and the way I was emotionally connected to their music, like right out of the gate. And it was like nothing at the time that I was listening to anyway. I had heard nothing like it before. And I just Hungry Like the Wolf and Rio, and I was just absolutely hooked. Now, you can also see I played this thing all the time. My carnal sins, I tried to tape the sides up because I was splitting the seams out on my records. And the artwork absolutely fascinated me. I thought it was just beautiful, different of the time. The music was fantastic. And it was a conscious decision on my part as an 11-year-old to want this record. Like I had to have this record. And I really feel that I've said before, like Skinny Puppy changed the trajectory of how I listen to music. Duran Duran changed for me too. That was a very pinnacle part of my musical experience because prior to this, there were a lot of other things, which I still love to this day that I listen to. But this kind of changed my thinking, the way I wanted to tap into discovering music, the types of music I was wanting to listen to. And it absolutely, to me, stands up the test of time. I can drop a needle on this record and I get just as excited. I get chills thinking about it, just as excited about this record now as I did when I first ever heard it. So it is nostalgia in a 12 by 12 sleeve. It is audible nostalgia, visual nostalgia, and it just means a lot to me because I do have that memory of, getting what was a cool record player for me at the time and like my first kind of grown up record player and, starting my own collection. And this was a definite marquee staple of my collection was Duran Duran's Rio. So that would be my number one. I had to pick two. I'm grabbing it. Here I go. That would be it. My second one would be Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy. So, of course, this was out in 1973. It has that beautiful Hypnosis cover, which absolutely hypnotizes me every time I look at it, inside and out. But this is an album I cannot imagine not having. You see the initials written on the top. That's my dad's initials. This was my dad's record. This was, this is like my father wrapped up with a bow to me. When I listen to this record, I think about my dad. I'm going to get emotional and I'm not going to do that. So you can see it's like a lot in me. But this album, my dad was a drummer. He loved music. He loves music. He was always, tapping and banging on something. And he was I remember at the time being into Led Zeppelin. And I remember him talking about the things that he loved. And as I grew as a teenager, I remember, nights sitting out in the summertime outside. We both like to sit outside and listen to music at night. And we would just talk about his time in bands and talk about the music that he loved. And my father was in the Air Force. We lived in England when I was very, very little, not old enough to appreciate it by any means, but just all those influences on my parents. And I feel like Led Zeppelin was just part of that journey. And I can't imagine not having this record. When I think about a record collection, and I've seen original copies with a little bit, without the initials on it and whatever. And maybe one day I'll pick one of those up. But to me, this album is just everything I love about music. And actually, for as much as I played it, the inside copy of this is just so great. But my favorites, oh my gosh, The Crunge, The Ocean, Dire Maker was my favorite song off of it. I don't know. It's hard to pick a favorite, but I do. I had the Atlantic label on that one, but it just is so, this is so my dad. Like, I can't even, you guys, like, it's really like when I thought about the challenge that he brought to me and talking about the 2 records that I would have to take, like, this popped into my head immediately. Like, it was like the absolute first thing I thought of. And I think it will always be the first thing that I think of. So that would be Houses of the Holy would be in my top 2. So those are I can only take 2 records with me. Those are the 2 that I would grab as of today. And I think of most all times, like, I think about those all the time. Those are my 2. So to Record Changer, I've accepted your challenge. To anybody else, before I get to my other 8 records, if you can think of 2 records that you absolutely could not imagine your life without, that you would have to take with you in whatever circumstances, or CDs, please write in the comments below. Please accept the challenge. Maybe start a thread and see how we can go from here. But it is really hard. And it was a little bit of an emotional journey, as you can see for me. So the next 8 are, to kind of finish off and make it a top 10 list, are albums that I do have like an emotional connection to. And some of these people may not even imagine me mentioning, but for different reasons. So this first one is called Tenderly. This came from a record collection of my grandparents. This particular album is a compilation record. It is, we've got Rosemary Clooney, Peter Nero, Aretha Franklin, Johnny Cash, Edie Gourmet. Edie Gourmet does The Look of Love. So good. Percy Faith, Ray Conniff. It's just sort of like the greatest hits of the time. I'm not even 100% sure, honestly, what year this particular record came out. It says 1973. So it was a 1973 release. My grandparents had one of those big, both of my grandparents had record albums. One set that I can particularly think of, my dad's parents, they had one of those big console record players that when you lifted the lid, it has a certain smell to it. And like just everything about it, audibly, I can just sense it. I go back. It just takes me back. Some of you, I know you're thinking the same thing. And there's a few of you out there who probably can't relate. But if you know, you know. And so this is a meaningful record to me because I do remember listening to these records on my grandparents' turntable. My one grandfather, my dad's dad, was a saxophone player. I started playing saxophone because of him. I loved big band music. I loved orchestral music, and my grandparents used to watch a lot of Lawrence Welk, as both sets of grandparents really did, and listen to a lot of fun compilation music. They would have card games and like card clubs, and so anyway, this was sort of that era, the kind of things that I was listening to. But these types of albums opened me up to learning, though, about Rosemary Clooney or Vicky Carr, or even getting a little Johnny Cash kind of in there. So I just absolutely, I think this is a fun record. I can put that on, and it's a real no-brainer for me. So the next one it's almost a twofer because one came out in 75, the next one came out in 76, and it is David Bowie's Young Americans. And then the next would be David Bowie, Station to Station. And these were both my parents' records. I've kept them. I kind of hijacked them at some point. They became my records. But my first introduction to David Bowie was through my mom and dad. I loved these records. I can't, I mean, of course, Young Americans, Can You Hear Me, Fame. Like, I remember even on my Holly Hobby record player playing these albums. Station to Station was absolutely the exact same way. Golden Years was probably hands down my favorite Bowie song for forever. Like, I can't even imagine. So much so that I took, I think it was Station to Station, or I think I brought Young Americans, Station to Station, and Houses of the Holy with me in first grade to show and tell. And I talked about these records, and I let everybody know that if David Bowie wasn't going to marry me one day, Robert Plant certainly was. So it's probably the weirdest show and tell they ever had. I don't think any other kids brought in Bowie records or anything like that, but that's where my head was at. Even as a first grader, I was just into the music. I was just intensely into the music. So these two one would follow the other. And again, Golden Years, like, I can't imagine a soundtrack to my youth that would not include Golden Years. So those two. The next one is by the band America. This particular album, I think this was also in 1975. I have such intense memories around America songs. This one is kind of a greatest hits if you didn't already know. So you get A Horse with a Name, I Need You, Sandman, Ventura Highway, Tin Man, Muskrat Love. I mean, it's just Sister Golden Hair. Like, I just have scent memories, visual memories. I grew up, spent time in Colorado as a really little kid, again, because my father was in the Air Force. I remember my mom driving me around listening to America. I remember hearing America as a young kid in elementary school. Like, I, again, cannot imagine not having an America record in my collection and not having these songs. So this would be a pick if I hadn't picked the other two. I mean, there's so many memories that those songs stir up in me that I just can't shake. And so this is like an absolute must in my collection. Again, this was original copy for me. It's been beaten. It's been well loved. You can see it needs a little bit of repair, but it needs a lot of love. So we have that one. This next one might seem odd, but I picked it because I really can't imagine Christmas without it. Christmas Is by Percy Faith. Again, like the soundtrack to every holiday I can think of since this album came out. My parents had a copy, which is the copy that I have today. My grandparents had a copy. And I don't know about any of you guys, but back when we only had, 10 or 12 or 13 channels or whatever it was, one channel was usually a local channel that had a news stream and maybe a TV guide on it, date and time, and it might have the weather like constantly going through. And every holiday they would play holiday music and, whatever. So my grandma and grandpa always left that on for their dog. And because when they were gone, they wanted her to have music playing. And I was a little kid and I would be at their house and I would remember hearing it. I would remember hearing this album. I remember hearing it on the TV, certain songs. Christmas Is probably my favorite one off of here. So Percy Faith, Christmas Is I think an absolute must, an emotional must for me. I can't imagine the holidays without it. Another one I think about too is related to my grandparents. They were so influential musically in my life. My mom and dad, I think, had this one too. It was Blooming Hits, Paul Marriott. I never knew the name. I just thought the girl on the front was amazing. I thought she looked beautiful. And it was so many, again, different artists. And my grandma and grandpa were very big, again, big band, Lawrence Welk, some country music. And I love big band music. I loved watching Lawrence Welk, but to know that there was kind of an orchestral version of Penny Lane, Mama, Puppet on a String. I mean, just some great songs on here that you just, I don't know, it's sort of like muzak or elevator music. um, but I loved it. I love this record. This every time I see one of these, I'm just like, oh, but I have one. This is again an original one. It was one of their copies, so it means a lot to me to have that one. My mom's mom loved Doris Day. This was one of her records. I got some albums from them. When they were kind of clearing things out of their house. And every time I think of Doris Day, I think of my grandma. And so this is a really kind of fun, upbeat record. I mean, she's so great anyway. More Can't Help Falling in Love, Losing You, Nightlife, Funny. I mean, she just had a great voice, a very distinct voice. Maybe some of the reasoning. I like her so much too. I like Peggy Lee. Obviously, I like Julie London. Like that whole era that, women who just would sing just beautiful songs. And it was so like, emotionally driven and fun. And I loved her movies. So every time I see Doris Day, I think about my grandma. So that is emotional for me. And the very last one, I guess my mom's parents, this was one of their albums, Pink Hawaii. I love Hawaiian music. I like to collect older albums, Hawaiian music from the 60s. And I love the artwork. I love everything about it. What makes this great, though, is it shows that I guess my love of Hawaiian music comes honestly because it must be a family tradition. Maybe it's of the times, too. Maybe some of you can speak to that. Like certain kinds of music, as we all know, are more popular. But I think it also carried over then. I love Martin Denny, any of that like exotic 60s cocktail lounge music. But what makes this one extra special is my grandfather had put a sticker on the label of this one that had his name and address on it. And I don't know, it's like a little piece of my grandpa out there that I know he took the time to do that. So it's extra meaningful to me. So Pink Hawaii would be another one that again, this was my grandparents' copy. I just can't imagine not having some of these records in my life. I mean, I'm a product of the 80s. I love punk and new wave, and those are all the things I discovered, and they became my music. But these are all the types of music, the foundational records that I started hearing at a very, very young age that imprinted on me, and I could never shake them, right? Like the imagery is beautiful. The songs are beautiful. They're just a very different time in music, and one that I really cherish and I appreciate so, so much. So there you have it, my top 10 emotional support records and my top 2 records that if I had to grab them today, they would be my 2 choices to take. Of all the albums I have, these would be the 2 that I would want to prioritize to save first. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little drop down memory lane. If you have anything like this that you've kept, I know we all use Discogs. It's so funny now to think I just had this grungy old box with all my stuff and I still have it. I love that stuff, you guys. Like I am such a sucker for ephemera, and it means everything to me. So I can't. So Record Changer 4038, thank you for challenging me to think about this subject. It was not easy, and I did enjoy it. It made me a little emotional, and but in a good way, and that's awesome, and that's what music is all about. So hopefully that will be something that maybe will kind of stir you guys thinking about your emotional connections to music too. So again, hit like and subscribe if you have not done so already. I appreciate all of the support. If you think my channel would be fun for somebody else, please take the time to forward it and share it. I think that's awesome as well. And in the comments, I would love to know, what 2 records would you take with you? Or are there any other emotional support albums that you can't imagine your life without, even if you don't listen to them every day? It's just knowing that you have them. So until next time, I hope you're spinning some great tunes and taking a little trip down memory lane and enjoying your 2 that you'll pick just for you. Thanks, guys. Take care.